Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. There's even a brand new Brigadier General tier where you can get a shout out on a Commander's Quarters episode that's dedicated to you. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, day one of Innistrad Crimson Vow spoiler season is off to a really fantastic start. I mean, we've got a lot of new and exciting cards and a really new and exciting mechanic that I want to highlight in this episode with Cleave. And actually, I guess to do so, I have to highlight a very exciting card that has the mechanic on it with Dig Up. So what is this new and exciting mechanic, and what potential does it have, and what in the world does Dig Up do? Well, let's jump into it to find out. So again, we can see the Cleave mechanic clearly on the Dig Up card, and my apologies that this Cleave word is actually highlighted. It's not going to be on actual cards, it just was in the screenshot that I got from the Twitch stream this morning, so bear with me, okay? Regardless, this is a sorcery for a green, and it's got a Cleave cost of 1 black, green, but we'll get back to what Cleave does here in just a second. So if you cast Dig Up for its regular cost of a green, you're going to search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. But if you actually cast this card for its Cleave cost, which again is 1 black, green, you're going to remove the words in square brackets on this card. So again, those words would be basic land and also reveal it. And I guess there's a comma in there too. Regardless, so if you cast it for its Cleave cost, which again is 4 total mana, 1 black, green, you are going to search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Does that sound familiar at all? 4 mana to tutor for a card? We'll get to that here in a bit. Regardless, so the Cleave mechanic essentially is, hey, this card's got some text on it, and if you'd like to get rid of that text, you can pay its Cleave cost instead. So in this case, you can either cast the card for just 1 mana and go tutor for a basic, which, is nice, but you can also, cast it for 4 mana and then instead go get any card. This is an incredibly flexible card that can either ensure that you hit a land drop early, or it can help you tutor for whatever you want later. Yeah, I am really hoping that this card's going to be budget friendly, but I'm not going to be holding my breath because I can see this seeing a lot of play. Essentially, in Commander, a lot of decks that have both green and black in their color identity are going to really want this card. Again, flexibility is clearly the name of the game with the Cleave mechanic. And actually, to my knowledge, this is the only Cleave card that has been spoiled so far, but I actually have a prediction for this Cleave mechanic, and I think I'm going to be right. Now, with the way the Cleave is applied on this card, obviously if you pay the Cleave cost, you're getting a better effect. So yeah, because of that, the Cleave cost is more than the actual cost of the card. However, I don't think that that's always going to be the case. If I had to guess, and again, this is only a prediction, and I very well could be wrong, but I would think that the reverse would be true as well. In that, in some Cleave cards, you're actually going to have a higher converted mana cost on the actual card itself, and the Cleave cost is going to be less. So maybe that's a card like, oh, I don't know, destroy target artifact and enchantment, but its Cleave cost is less and you just basically get to destroy target artifact or something like that. The bigger effect in that case would be how the card actually just reads on its own. And then by removing those square brackets, you're getting lesser of effect rather than more. And actually, really quick on a different note, I think with those square brackets, it's going to take a little bit of time for, people to actually get used to reading and understanding these cards, because yeah, it's just not really all that natural to be like, okay, I'll just eliminate these 2 parts of the card and not read them. Regardless, I'm sure players will get used to it, just as we've gotten used to, all the other kind of weird card layouts that we've seen. Regardless, yeah, I do think that there's a lot of flexibility with this kind of mechanic. Again, you can have a higher converted mana cost on the actual card, a lower Cleave cost, and the reverse, and I actually think that we might see some cards that basically have the exact same cost on the card that we see in the Cleave cost too. Now, as for why that card would be designed in that way, maybe there's an effect that you might not want in certain situations. I mean, maybe it's a spell that says destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments, and maybe there's a square bracket around, creatures, so you can essentially choose not to blow up creatures, but you're still getting artifacts and enchantments. Essentially, again, just giving it another layer of flexibility when, sometimes it's going to be helpful just to destroy everything, but other times if you've got, the most creatures on the board or the best creatures on the board, you want to keep those in play. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different directions that they can go with this mechanic, and I'm excited to see more cards. But earlier I did mention a card, or actually potentially even some cards, that this card actually reminds me of, so let's jump into those really quick and some somewhat similar mechanics that we've seen in the past. So yeah, Dig Up is essentially a combination of Lay of the Land and Diabolic Tutor. Now, Lay of the Land doesn't see very much play in Commander decks at all, but that doesn't mean it's a bad card. It just means that, well, it's taking up a slot that, well, can be better used for other cards. On the other hand, though, Diabolic Tutor sees a ton of play in Commander. I mean, we're talking about 12% of eligible decks. Yeah, it's up there, I believe, in the top at least 200, maybe 150 cards on EDH Rec. So yeah, again, I think there's definitely a reason to believe that Dig Up is going to be an incredibly popular card for the decks that can run it. I mean, you can essentially just consider Dig Up as a Diabolic Tutor that happens to have a Lay the Land stapled to it if you need it. And having that Lay the Land option on the card can really help you out in a lot of circumstances. I mean, in all honesty, a card that gives you either of these options is essentially going to just help you have more keepable hands. Even though most of the time you're probably just going to cast this basically as a Diabolic Tutor with that Cleave cost, having this is essentially a Lay the Land early on in the game if you really need to hit a land drop or really have a really good hand, except you're, one land short, but you could, utilize this to go get a basic land. It's just going to help out a lot. Flexibility in Magic is basically never a bad thing, and yeah, having each of these halves can help you out in a lot of circumstances. I mean, and on top of that, to be completely honest, and I'm probably not the only one that has ever done this, but I have most definitely cast a Diabolic Tutor in an act of desperation to go get a land to hit a land drop. Now, is that usually how I'm using Diabolic Tutor? No, but have I done it before? Yes. So yeah, in that circumstance, I would much rather just pay, 1 mana to go get a basic instead of paying the 4 to do so. And actually, lately, Wizards has been making more and more flexible cards, which can, really help just kind of smooth out your game. And again, I am really hoping that Dig Up, which again is basically this combination of Lay the Land and Diabolic Tutor, is a budget-friendly card, because I really want it in my Cody deck, okay? In my Cody deck, I'm basically running every single 1-mana land tutor spell, and yeah, Cody loves 1-mana spells and also hitting land drops, and also flexibility when it comes to the cards in the deck. So yeah, Dig Up would be perfect. So please, please, please let this be budget, even though I'm pretty positive it's definitely not going to be. Regardless, it seems like more and more often lately we've been getting more flexible mechanics and more flexible cards, so let's jump into a few more similar ones now. Now, of course, Dig Up is essentially, again, a combination of Lay the Land and Diabolic Tutor, like I said, but the card that it actually reminded me most of, though, is like a card like Mythos of Nethroi, or I guess I should say pretty much all the Mythos cards. Because also, when you actually read this card, it's kind of hard to actually understand what it's going to be doing. Kind of, again, like those, square brackets, there's kind of some workarounds that you have to do to actually be like, oh, okay, this card does this. Mythos of Nethroi is an instant for 2 and a black, and it says destroy target non-land permanent if it's a creature or if green-white was spent to cast this spell. Now, this is probably the most efficient way to word this spell, but it can be kind of confusing. Basically, if you spend green and white to cast this spell, so again, the spell would basically be green, white, black, you can destroy any target non-land permanent. But if you didn't spend green and white, so again, you just used, 2 generic mana and a black or whatever else, you can only destroy a creature with this spell. So it's definitely somewhat confusing, like I think Cleave is, and it's going to take some time to get actually used to. And again, like I mentioned with the possibility of some Cleave cards in the future, I think that this one kind of shows just how flexible Cleave cards can be. Because again, this has the exact same converted mana cost, whether, you're paying 2 and a black or paying green, white, black, but it's got 2 different effects. Or I guess you should say 2 different possibilities on what you can actually target with it. But yeah, again, I think this is a pretty apt comparison because again, it's kind of understand to know exactly what this card is doing when you first read it. And even if you've read it a couple times, it still can be confusing. Regardless, really quick, another flexible mechanic that we've seen lately are MDFC cards like Wandering Archaic and the backside, which is Explore the Vastlands. Now, obviously, this is much different than Cleave in that, you aren't just, taking off square brackets from a card. It's kind of like a completely separate card, but on the same card. You know what I mean. Regardless, again, it does seem like Wizards is giving us more and more flexible cards, so essentially we have a lot of options when it comes to, well, what we're going to be doing with the cards that are in our hand. Again, flexibility is essentially never a bad thing, and being able to have a different effect for a different situation, or whatever our, mana situation is with Cleave cards, it's going to be impactful. Commander players definitely like to have options in their cards, and yeah, I can see Cleave being a popular mechanic if we get some more cards that are, well, kind of on par or, even close to what Dig Up is. I mean, even an older mechanic like Split Card shows off the effectiveness of, flexibility with cards like Expansion Explosion and Flower and Flourish. Or I guess I should say Expansion Explosion is probably a much more popular card than Flower and Flourish, but I'll talk about why I'm highlighting that one here in a bit. I mean, Expansion Explosion allows you to either copy an instant sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less just for 2 mana, or, at instant speed you can deal a lot of damage or draw a lot of cards. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say or, you do both. Yeah, that's a good card. Whereas Flower and Flourish, well, doesn't see anywhere near as much play, but Flower, like Dig Up, can go get you a land, though this one gets you a Forest or Plains, and then Flourish gives your creatures +2/+2 until end of turn. The other reason I'm highlighting this is, it is yet another card in Cody, and please, please, please let Dig Up be budget friendly. It won't be, I know it won't be, but please let it be. So yeah, that's essentially the entire breakdown of Cleave, as to what we know so far. Again, I do have some guesses as to what Cleave cards might look like here coming out in the next couple of days. But again, I could be very wrong. Maybe every single Cleave card follows this exact same format. With a small converted mana cost, and then a higher Cleave cost, and then a bigger effect because of that. But I think, again, we're going to see other cards that are somewhat like Mythos of Nethroi, where even if it has the exact same converted mana cost, for the actual card and for the Cleave cost, we're going to have different effects. Or again, the exact opposite of this card, where we have cards that have, a really high converted mana cost, but a lower Cleave cost that kind of just reduce the amount of effects that you get. So yeah, I'm really excited to see more Cleave cards, and I'm hoping this is a budget card, but I am not holding my breath. And with that, the show has come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So make sure you comment below and let me know what your thoughts on this episode are. And as always, thanks again and have a good one.